Aaron, what is going on, brother? Appreciate you being here today, man. Are you ready to let it rip?
Let her rip.
Let her rip. So, dude, I have, I've been following you for some years. I know your band was way higher on the pedestal than we were, but we ran into some shows together. I couldn't even tell you the year, but I know one of them was at the Windy City Invitational in Chicago. It was like maybe like an off Ozfest kind of thing where it was like you guys, Kitty, and we were on a black metal tour, which is the fucking weirdest thing for a metalcore band to be on a full death metal, black metal tour. But it was maybe like our second tour. And I remember, dude, I'm like, hell yeah, dude, we got this one-off date. We're playing with fucking Bury Your Dead and Kitty. And it ended up being a really good show. It was our first time to Chicago. I may have been 22 years old at that time, but been following the band for many years, dude. But for the people that are tuning into this, man, tell us a little bit about Aaron. Like, what are you about? What are you doing now? Are you still jamming with Bury Your Dead? Do you have other projects going on? Let's fucking hear it.
All right. So I'm originally from Cincinnati, Ohio, and I joined. I had a bunch of bands throughout. Started my first band when I was 14 in high school. Had a bunch of different things that I did for over 10 years, trying to make music a reality. So obviously that's a tough thing. And so like I went to art college, and then my band. I was in a punk rock band at the time. Got signed, dropped out of college, and I was like, I want to go live in a van and eat PB&J sandwiches.
Yes, right.
And then so did a bunch of that, became a welder, and into my early 20s, and then I joined Bury Your Dead, as a full-time touring thing, and they had lost a bass player, so I joined, and then my touring career kind of became a reality. And the neatest thing about that is, they always say as an entrepreneur, it takes like 10 years to become successful as a business. And so pretty true to that, it was about 10 years from when I started my first band to when I was able to like quit my job as a welder, moved to Florida. And then opened my first tour with them was we opened for DevilDriver. And that was pretty cool, which I ended up becoming in that band later in life. And then my second tour, which was like probably one of the most pivotal experiences that I've ever had, was that Korn invited us to come out on Family Values on 2006. So I'm like, 6 months prior, I'm welding. And then here I am opening for Korn, Deftones, Stone Sour, playing in amphitheaters, which was like, a 24-year-old kid, mind's pretty blown. And so just some incredible memories from that tour. Is probably still one of my like all-time favorites. And then, I, as a band member, I was so curious, not only in the music world, but as I started touring more, like on a real level, I wanted to know more about like the behind the stage, who sets all this stuff up, and like how like real touring production goes. And so as we would do big support tours, we ended up doing Kill Switch next, and then, and a few other things. So I started like mentoring under larger tour managers, like, how do you do this? And some of the older guys, I'd be like, how did you advance a show in 1980 in Europe before the internet and cell phones? And did you like fax, like production specs? I mean, I know how long it takes to set up a European tour or a tour in Asia and Australia, but like, I don't know, I just can't fathom how much, like the slow response time. And so I started working on a tour management career as well. And then, things with Bury Dead ended in like 2010, 2009, 2010. And then I went out and tour managed Unearth. And then I tour managed DevilDriver. I'll give you a quick synopsis of my resume, if you want to call it that, which leads to a lot of different things. So tour managed Unearth, tour managed DevilDriver, ended up becoming in that band for 2 years and playing with them on a record cycle. And then I was in a band called Legend. I ended up filling in for Kingdom of Sorrow with Jamie Josta and Kirk Weinstein from Crowbar. We did Mayhem Fest. That was super sick. Went on to tour manage Hatebreed for almost 5 years. Tour managed Bring Me the Horizon, which was funny because when I was in Bury Your Dead, we brought them over on their like first US tour ever. Actually, I think they did like a couple weeks with Kitty, and then they met up with us or something like that. But we pretty much brought them to the States when they were just like these little kids, and took them out on a headliner, which was super sick because like it was crazy to watch them come over and then just And then, but I ended up tormenting them the year later on the Sempiternal cycle for an entire year, which was super sick. Yeah, what else was cool? I got to go fill in for In Flames on bass, played for Lamb of God for a few weeks. So a lot of cool things in different avenues as like a session touring bass player, as well as a tour manager. And
Yeah.
I just completed this last tour. We were just talking about this. I did a 45-piece Ukrainian orchestra um, that had never been to the States before. So organized that, brought them, and just took them around the country, which was really cool and something I'm like pretty prideful of because they do stuff so different than how we tour and their expectations. So it was a lot of like bringing my 20 years of experience to like to another camp and making a successful tour. And it's almost, you know, you look at all these little tours that you do, you put a lot of your personal effort and energy in it. You're basically on 24 hours a day, you know, like taking care of all these people. We had 60 people on our crew,
Yeah.
buses and semis and stuff like that. And so yeah, it's cool. It's always neat to watch your like career grow and like in these different avenues as a player. And I did a lot of K-pop stuff the last couple of years, and yeah, a little bit of everything.
You
I
mentioned
I do have to jump in on this
you
because
good, you do it.
as you're saying this, it's so well, and no pun intended, it's so well orchestrated in just how this timeline worked out. And the one thing you rarely hear from creatives, whether it's musicians or artists, is the ability to organize. You know, a lot of them just fly by the seat of their pants. It's mostly madness and things just tend to fall into place. But it sounds like what really drew you to other thing was the organization of how all of this stuff just like formulates. How do you put it together so seamlessly? How do you organize the pieces? Has that always been something that you've I guess like taken a liking to, is just how things are organized, or did it just kind of become the inevitable byproduct of going from band to band, opportunity to opportunity, and just seeing similar traits, or like seeing things that were done differently that you wanted to organize?
So as someone that has clinical ADHD, OCD, um, I I know how I like I don't know. I'm a visual person, and when I see things, you know, like it's like life is like a puzzle. And so whenever I was out touring, you know, like I said, I would watch how I was so curious on how does this organized? How do you plan for all these things? And like, how do you make all other than just walking to stage? There's so many elements to it. And it's funny because I didn't want to have to get a real job if I wasn't touring. Like if I came home from tour or if I like wasn't playing with somebody, because performing and playing is obviously like my first passion. That's like the thing that lights my spirit up, right? That's like my outlet. And that's been, you know, since I was a kid and started playing music, that was the thing that was my therapy. That was, and it's funny. Like I told someone this not too long ago, but that it never clicked. When I was a kid, playing music in my room to CDs, imagining I was on stage, and I had every square inch of my ceilings and walls covered in magazine cutouts from like Hit Parader
Yeah.
and Rip Magazine, if you remember all those. Because that was all the access we had, you know, was looking through liner notes and albums or buying a magazine or that kind of stuff. We didn't have the internet. And it's funny, someone was like, that's your manifestation board. You know, like you putting all these things up and dreaming about Metallica and watching Woodstock 94, that was you knowing where you wanted to go. And to me, there was never a plan B. Once you know, like started playing shows and especially once I started touring for real, I'm like, I have to keep doing this. I'm infatuated with new stimulus, new things every day. You know, it's like so healthy, I think, for ADHD people to not be stagnant. And so if I wasn't playing, I was like, how can I keep touring so that I don't have to go get another welding job or do something else? And so I was like, I want to learn how to and I've done every job on tour except front of house. It's the only thing I don't do, but I've done monitors, guitar techs, production manage, stage manage, tour manage. And it's led to a lot of gigs, you know, like I TM'd DevilDriver and then ended up playing bass, right place, right time. The bass player was kind of going through something and I happened to be on tour. Hey, I can do things. And then the same thing with Kingdom of Sorrow. I tour managed and played bass. I was in All That Remains for 7 years. So I tour managed first. Jeannie wanted to leave. She had her own thing going on with her husband at the time. And so I got asked to play bass. And that, you know, so it's also perpetuated my passion as well. So, you know,
Yeah.
they kind of have always gone hand in hand.
Yeah, you and I are very similar, man. You mentioned something back when you were 14 playing in a punk rock band. I was 13, started my first punk rock band. And you said something that set. It was 10 years as in the entrepreneur world. 10 years later, you were doing what you loved and making a career out of it. As we're at 23, that's when I happened to get signed with Century Media Records. All the big touring started happening. We got on the
Sick.
MTV show, all the shit. Did you always have that mindset, before, 24 years old, of that entrepreneurial mindset? Was it something that was already in you, or do you think you developed that over the years?
Definitely in me. I mean, I come from a working class family, and my dad instilled some really great values in me and working hard. And so like throughout, I've had a job since I was 14. And I don't know, I think I just always knew that that was where I wanted to be and what I wanted to do, and whatever that meant. I mean, obviously it's great when you get to be part of a band, like dug in for real and not just hired for a tour or something like that. Uh, and I being integrated into the business side of things just to oversee, to make sure, like I like to know that things are efficient and run and done smart, because I can't stand watching dumb stuff happen, or like bad decisions being made. And I think that's what makes me a good tour manager, is that the details matter. Like I know what it's like being an artist, and I like to know when, if I hire somebody, like how are they overseeing or thinking 3 steps ahead so that we're happy, we're taken care of. And I do the same thing for my clients. It's like, I know what it's like to be in my shoes and not just whatever's easiest or whatever the case is, like go the extra effort. It makes people feel comfortable.
For sure.
Think I was gonna say, like, I've noticed a pattern. We've got to get better at this, Jake.
Yeah,
We are
no.
unorganized when it comes to these
Very.
conversations, because it's exciting, and I'm noticing a pattern, the rule of tens. Because you are not the first person, Jake is not the first person. Matt Vincent also said it. I believe Josh had said it. Like, certain things occur in our lives as a natural byproduct after about a decade of intentional focus and going through, whether it's the stresses, the struggles, the lack of clarity, or just the diligent work put in because of the passion felt. And I think that's something that should be integrated into more constant conversations, is where were you, and like, where does the rule of 10 apply? Because Matt Vincent didn't become the Highland Games champ until 10 years. So his mainframe is, if I'm not willing to dedicate 10 years to it, is it really worth my time today? And the more I hear, like, gentlemen like yourself who've done so many cool things, it's like every 10 years you can generally expect a real solid, like, epiphany or breakthrough or massive win. And I don't know, I had to say that out loud, because it's so common. But I think there's a big issue with people being able to maintain that 10-year timeline to see things through to the end, just because of the excitement in what's possible.
Well, and too, like during that time period, and even now, if we want to say starting in 1996, I'm 30 years in, and there's always peaks and valleys, and it gets frustrating, it gets complicated, and it's just always a new set of problems to navigate. When you're on the early years, I think about all the things that I dealt with then, and then the next set of 10, and the next set of 10. There's always, new hurdles to problem solve. It doesn't always get easier, even though the trajectory since day one, you guys kind of got to remind yourself and take a step back, because at the time, like, I need to find a gig right now, or whatever the case is, you look back and go, hey, wait a second, 20 years ago I was here, but even through all the peaks and valleys, they're like still going upward, right? And you got to, like, hey, like, I'm still making this happen. Like, I'm still putting my all into this, and you just got to stay the course, and and navigate the waters.
Yeah.
Because I think, and I tell people this all the time, that I knew, as getting back to even your original question, I knew when I was younger, I was like, man, I'm just not wired to go to college and then get some 9 to 5, and that's terminal velocity, right? That some people
Yeah.
like that comfort. I'm gonna get a job at some place. I'm gonna make just enough to get a thing and another thing and a thing and another thing, like in Fight Club. We
Yeah.
or whatever to people to buy shit we don't need, or all that kind of stuff, and it's so true. It's like there's just too much life and too much to explore. You get one go around, so you might as well make it what you want and make it sick, versus being like, well, I'm comfortable, and when I'm 68, I can start doing things.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's fascinating, dude. Like, I was talking before Mikey's question or statement. We were talking about kind of how we ran the same path, but you had one approach and I had a completely different. You know, when I dropped out of college to go on my first tour with the band, it was just party. It was nonstop party for us. We were considered the Motley Crew of the 2000s. Like the band's fear, All That Remains feared us in Europe, Sounds of the Underground, because if your stage door, your backstage door was open, we're coming in and we're grabbing the beer, especially for the opening band. We're grabbing Hatebreed beer, we're jacking Motorhead's whiskey, and we're known for that party band, dude. And looking back and the things I know now, would we have done things different? Probably not. That's just who we were. My stage name was Jake Daniels, you know, named after Jack Daniels. I had a pint of fucking whiskey with me every tour. The first time we met up with Unearth, Trevor grabs me. We go grab a handle of the Jack Daniels, but
I'm so sorry. Remind me what band?
Mantis. We were Mantis.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So the approach was so different, hearing your story and how we grew up kind of the same background, but you took a completely different approach than the way I did. And that's probably why you're still at this point, because I dreamt about tour managing. I always was a very organized. I was the leader of the band. I set up the interviews. I did all the back end shit. And I knew after the career, I was going to tour manage. And thank God I took a different approach in fitness, because I probably would have been dead from alcoholism or some cirrhosis of the liver or something. But I just think it's so fascinating, man, because even fitness is something that it seems like has been a part of your life for so long. And that was the last thing I thought about until I needed to get fit, until I was done touring and going, I'm going to die if I don't get fit. You know what I mean? So let's talk a little bit about that fitness side. Did you always have that part of you, or is that something that kind of came later on? Like, tell me a little bit about that background.
So I started getting a little bit like light working out. I had a friend in high school that played lacrosse, and we would hang out and listen to punk rock and stuff like that. And he had a gym in his basement. And so after school, we'd go there and listen to hardcore and punk records, and he would like just show me how to work out. And then I got sober when I was 19 years old, because I was in that state when I was in high school, just a hot mess. And once I finally made that choice, I started boxing. I did that for like 3-ish years, and then graduated more towards weight training and some other things. So I didn't drink for 20 years of my life, and so like not having that on my mind, like while I was touring, and I didn't smoke weed or anything. So that definitely kept my priorities in check. And that was definitely the best thing that I ever did for myself back then, was just like, I'm going to either end up dead, I'm going to drive drunk and kill somebody. I mean, I just, was dealing with all my problems in an unhealthy way from my childhood, if you want to call it that. So that really like played a big factor into it. And then, I just fell in love with working out. I wanted to look good on stage and feel good. And then, down the road, I ended up getting into powerlifting. That's how I met Matt and started competing, because I needed a goal. I needed something to sink my teeth into, to really like take fitness. And I was like, I do the same thing all the time, and like I want to like really dedicate myself to something fit. I was like, should I bodybuild? And my friend Aaron, I used to live up in Canada for a few years, and he was the first Canadian natural athlete that won the Olympia in the, I think, men's physique, whatever thing. And I remember reaching out to him and being like, hey dude, I'm thinking about getting into bodybuilding. I want to step it up. And he goes, don't do it. Don't do it. It'll ruin your life. I'm like, oh, it's like, you should do powerlifting. I'm like, but I'm like 190 pounds. I'm like, not strong. It's like, I think it'll be better for you. And so I followed that path, and it was like amazing. And the amount of people I met, like Matt and so forth, and his wife Bonnie, and
yeah. Wild, man. I after the band and stuff, and I'm not trying to make this about me, but I ended up opening a gym. I became a certified personal trainer, opened a gym, and I fell heavy in love with CrossFit. And then that led into powerlifting. I competed powerlifting for 3 or 4 years. And then it's funny because I just did my first men's physique at 40 years old 4 years ago. And now I've competed 3 times.
Amazing. Congrats.
And I thought no disrespect to your Canadian friend, but I think everybody who's thinking about it should put themselves through at least one competition to really find out kind of like what your body is built, because it's a completely different discipline. Powerlifting's one, you got your hypertrophy, you got your rest, recovery. Bodybuilding's more of that mental, a calorie deficit, like kind of shit. Nor was I ever trying to go pro or get my car. It was more for my mental capacity. But that's hilarious, dude. Let's talk about kind of what you're doing now, because I couldn't really tell by looking at your Instagram page, but it looks like you're doing a lot of self-work. I don't want to use the name self-help, but self-work, internal work. Is that something that you pursue as like possibly being a coach, or that you really just like going to retreats or things like that? Like explain kind of that story, dude.
Well, like I said about the peaks and valleys of life, and as we get older, I think we, because when we're in our 20s and when I was in my like late 20s and touring, like I had a direction, but at the same time, you're not worried about what happens when you're 50 years old. And as we get older and our lifestyle changes and we go through things, relationships, stuff with work, I think it's like making sure that you're steering the course as you get older and making sure you're centered and grounded. And yeah, I got to go to a really amazing treat out in Hawaii, which was one of Matt's friends hosted it. Nick, I'm so sorry, Nick. He's got this really long Greek name that I still look at it. I'm dyslexic too. I still look at it to this day and be like, kind of, and but he's oh my God, him and his buddy Josh, they were two ex special ops guys, and they'd been through multiple combat tours. I mean, some insane life experience. So getting out there to submit to this because, I think especially as a man, it's easy like, I don't need help. I don't need to go hang out with a bunch of dudes and talk about my feelings. Like what I mean? Like being vulnerable and having some kind of growth, it's amazing what that can do. I did my first 72-hour fast at the beginning of the year too. And once again, it's incredible when you do something new stimulus, getting back to like touring and constantly challenging yourself and having something new to sink your teeth in, like, you know, as the Hatebreed album, satisfaction is the death of desire, right? And
Yeah.
so when things get stagnant and aren't moving in any direction or the other, it can be very unsettling. It piques anxiety. And so going out and trying to get new skills, new tools, right? We all have a toolbox, and some people only got a hammer in there, and some people have micro tools. They have the things for all these situations, which is great because as we encounter people in our lives, whether they're loved ones or just in passing, like you have the ability to share those tools with people and affect and help other people's lives, which is a beautiful thing. And so if you can go somewhere and get new tools for your toolbox, that's great. That's what life's all about. That's growth. Um, I,
That's a
I I
flip.
have thought about that. Yeah. So yeah, I
No,
have thought
go.
about it. Sharing my own travel and life experience with other people because I don't know, it's easy to look at yourself and go like, I don't have anything figured out. And it's easy. We walk around with our blinders on in our own little world and what we're doing. But as soon as you take a step back and look at the micro and the macro level and see what life and existence and our spirituality and it's all about, I think you can just really like make a positive impact in other people's lives as well as your own.
You know, we spoke about Brandon Chapetti earlier, and somebody that who has been well in the fitness game with music, setting up backstage workout areas at Warp Tours and traveling with bands and doing what he loves. I think there's a space, and I would love to see this coming back. And Brandon and I talk about this all the time, is getting back out on the road and doing those Warp Tour type setup pop-ups. I went with him to San Diego a couple times to those. But do you feel that there's a space or a place for that kind of practice for musicians now more than ever, especially with what we're seeing with the internet and the urgency and all the stuff happening? Do you think like more bands, because obviously you're still on the road, you still do a lot of things. I haven't been on the road for many years. I go to a lot of shows, but I don't know what tours like these years. Do you think there's a space for that kind of coaching or a necessity for somebody like yourself to kind of maybe help the uprising of these new musicians kind of have that same mindset?
I really do, because when I started, it was let's do dips on road cases. Gyms back in the mid 2000s, you couldn't get day passes. Like it just wasn't a thing. If you're not a member, you can't come in. And so we would find whatever hodgepodge. I mean, I think the most we ever brought out on us was like an easy curl bar with some plates, and we found ways to do a million different variations of workouts. And then now, like everybody offers a day pass, which is a great thing. And obviously like hotel gyms and so, but more so than just a physical outlet, gym, I mean, it's up here, it's like we take on stress in our lives and it causes tension, right? Like cortisol response in our circulatory system, everything like our body bears down in defense mode whenever we're anxious, we're stressed. And I know, and especially when you're out on the road dealing with new people and new things, you get a phone call from home, going and dilating your body and getting that outlet and sweating, like it's just incredible. it's funny. I was on tour one day. I was having a verge of a panic attack. And I remember being like, I need to talk to somebody. I remember calling Matt Vincent and I went, hey man, kind of in my head right now, going through it. And he said a few things and he said, do me a favor. You could- can you go walk for 10 minutes? And I said, yeah. He's like, will that hurt you? No. It's like, do you think there's anything bad about going for a walk for 10 minutes? And I went, no. He's like, go for a walk for 10 minutes. Get out of your room, go in there. And I did. And then I ended up walking for 30 minutes. And I felt like a different person after. And I tell people all the time, the hardest part is obviously showing up, getting your shoes on and doing it. You know, we can talk ourselves out of it all day long. But more often than not, if you go, all right, I'll at least get in my car and go there and I'll walk for 10 minutes. If everything still sucks, I'll leave. At least I accomplished something. That's a micro win. And more often than not, once you like get an inflow of air, you know, like maybe break a sweat, I kind of want to work out. I'm already here. And then you'd leave a changed person. And so I think it would be amazing to have that facility to, like you said, maybe even go to events or shows, especially when they're out in the middle of a parking lot. You know, not everybody. When I toured with Whitechapel, we had on a MAM festival, we had a bumper plates and like a squat rack and a bench, and we'd set a tent up every day, and I got to work out, and it just like changed my whole day. So I think it is important, because too many people, often not, you get bored, you start drinking, just eat pizza all day because like you don't have the money to, or maybe not have a bus with a kitchen in it to take care of yourself, and your mental health on tour is everything.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I love that you said, you'd set up the road cases for the dips, because there was the time in our bus we did an ice chest for a bench press. Well,
Yep.
you shouldn't do that intoxicated, because the ice chest flipped over, ice and beers all across the, that's the difference between you and I on a tour. Like, I had the thought, but the thought was completely bad.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, I'm glad you said it that way, dude. And I think this day and age, we're seeing a lot more sobriety in bands. We're seeing not so much the straight edge name, but just sobriety in general. We're seeing more dudes fit on stage. We're seeing more dudes taking care of themselves outside of touring and stuff like that. And my original question was more like maybe the mindset, like somebody like a Matt Vincent, to help artists kind of speak. And now you said it was something that you kind of had thought about, but would that be an avenue that would be needed, as far as not just the fitness, but the mindset? Somebody that, the touring musician could call a Matt Vincent and talk it out. Or if they're going through the drummer, they get the phone call from home, because I know a lot of shit plays through your head, because you're on stage 30 minutes to maybe 90 minutes if you're lucky. And the rest of the day, this is what we talked to Josh Corbin about. You get the rest of the day to kind of do fuck all. And it's a very good thing, but it's a very scary thing, because I've been drunk for 23 of those hours. You know what I mean? I've been up, I've done the bad, but I also, toward the end of my career, started doing the workouts and started getting the walks in and doing the vocal practices and all the things we really needed. And it was such a difference. And that's kind of where my question's going, was being someone there to be more of the mindset coach, being more of that life coach to an individual on tour going through it. Do you see a need for that as well?
I mean, I think everybody can benefit from goal orientation into how can I be a better version of myself? Because especially when, I think that's what's, and I always say Bubble is the musician and Aaron's the tour manager, because it's like I'm literally two different people when I'm in each role. And when I'm playing, getting an Uber and going to a gym for 3 hours, that's like, other than performing, that's the peak of my day. And it gets me out of there, versus it's just tough to sit around because
Yeah.
idle hands, right?
Yeah.
And tour managing, I'm too busy to do that kind of stuff. But from the production side, people, personnel, and even band members, I certainly think so, because especially once you get to day 4 or 5 and everything starts getting in routine, how do I like stay present? How do I like keep doing things to keep my mind in a good place, so that like, hey, work on your craft, or um, I don't know, not let the daily stresses, because not everybody gets to tour comfortably too,
Yeah.
It's challenging.
Very challenging. I love that. Now I got to ask, because you said it and I didn't bring it up, but where did the name Bubble come from?
So when I was 18 years old, that sounds about right, 18, I was a bit plump from drinking and Taco Bell. And, you know, I wasn't quite, I had just started kind of working out, but not like on a real level. I didn't know how to eat or like how to truly train or anything. So my friends used to, we'd all go out and everything. And there's a Scotty and Charlie Benante from Anthrax had a side project called MOD. If you're familiar with them, with Billy Milano. And, you know, I'm sure I can't remember, I think they knocked it out in like a day or something, but they had all these like thrash metal songs with all these like super silly, offensive lyrics. And one of these songs was called Bubble Butt. And it's just this dumb drum beat that goes bubble butt, whatever. And so all my friends, they'd all get hammered. We'd all be at a show or something like that. And they'd all just like be hammered and something would happen or we'd all be hanging out. And they would all just go, bubble butt. And they would all start chanting it at me. And it was so embarrassing out of love, you know, like, but just to humiliate me. And then it just kind of never went away, you know. And I have which is the bane of my existence, but I have a pretty serious anterior tilt to my hips, which is like caused compression on my L5, so I have a bulging disc, but it makes my butt look like it sticks out. And since I was a kid, I've been getting made fun of. My coaches to go, "Come on, fat ass," which is a whole nother story.
Yeah.
So yeah, so all my friends used to call me Bubble Butt, and then it just turned into Bubble.
That's why 40-year-old Aaron is just shredded as shit, man. You had some internal damage at an early age, man. And I know what that feels like. I had the nickname Tootie from the fat dude in Goodfellas. You know what I mean? Like I was a big boy. I was a big boy back in the day, dude. Let's just put it this way. At all the baby showers, I'd win the guess my belly measurements. You know what I mean? I would just pop mine out. Yeah, nothing to be proud of. I've had better
called me
moments.
Lunchbox. All of our friends were dicks.
Hey, I had a friend Lunchbox, so
there you go. That's funny. We had a punk band called Lunchbox here. Or no, it was Lunch Truck, but same thing. Lead singer was huge. Good guy. Awesome, dude. So I want to know, dude, I didn't want to get too far into Bury Your Dead, but I mean, what are some of the best moments you had with the band? I know there's going to be some fans on here listening. Could you speak about some of the best tours you guys had, best times you guys had? I want to hear it.
Bury Your Dead specifically?
Yeah, let's do Bury Your Dead. We can knock them all out, but I want to hear some Bury Your Dead stuff.
Wow, so much to unpack there.
Yeah.
Like I said, to this day, I remember on that Family Values tour, you know, we had first time I'd ever toured we had rented an RV, which was like a huge thing, you know, going from conversion vans. And then I remember getting to Atlanta at Aaron's Amphitheater. There was like a pre-production day, then the first show. You know, you get in, you load in, and you know they like set the stage, and you deal with stage manager. They get the flow of the day, and credentials, and all that stuff. But I remember it was almost sundown, and I remember walking around the stands in the amphitheater and sitting down and just like being in this massive venue. And I called my mom, and I was like, "Mom, like doing it, you know, after all this time." And that was, I don't know, it was pretty pivotal to like, you know, my parents had watched me, had all these band practices in their basement and like this band, that band, drop out of college twice, you know, all this stuff, and to like, you know, be like, hey, like it's happening, you know, like all this stuff. Like, I know I told you that this is what I wanted to do. And I'm sure they're in your head, you're like, what is my son doing? You know, like there's no money in being a musician. And that was really cool to like, that was a full circle moment. And on that tour, we played Riverbend Music Center in Cincinnati, which is where I saw my first concert when I was 6. We saw, they took me to see Traffic with Steve Winwood, super sick. And so getting to go and play that venue, and like my grandma came and stuff like that. That was really, really cool. What else was neat? Let's see.
Love what you just said. I love that feeling, dude, of playing that one venue that just means so much to you, because there's nothing like that feeling. And for me, it was House of Blues Anaheim, you know.
Sick. Yeah, great venue.
My whole family there. We headlined that show right after the TV show, and it was just one of those pivotal. It was before we were signed. We had like 5 labels there. They were all basically kind of coming after us, and we sold that show out with just some local bands. And after, it was just looking up, I saw my grandma, I saw my mom, my uncles, and they're just looking at me because a year before that, I dropped out of college and told my mom everything's going to be all right. And literally like a year to the day, there I am just looking out to an ocean. People, I'm like, holy shit, how did this punk rocker that was playing backyard keggers? So that's, I love that one, dude. That's pivotal as fuck, you know?
Definitely. Big full circle moment. Getting to see the first music video we did for House of Straw was on MTV2, you know, after watching that for countless years, being like, I'm on fucking TV. That was pretty massive.
Have you know, House of Straw made it on our number 2 track for the Let Her Rip podcast, Spotify playlist. That song, I mean, I think that was monumental on tour with us. That was one of the bus warm-up songs, because back in that day, I mean, there are a lot of good bands, the Kill Switch, when Howard joined, Terror. I mean, dude, there's just so many, but for some reason, that House of Straw, that intro, that's up there in the top 10 metalcore, hardcore riff, dude. It's gotta be. I mean, it's sick.
Well, Jason and Mark Sukoff and Mark Lewis, they did just such an insane job producing that record. I mean, sonically to this day, it still holds up, like I still listen to it and I'm like, God, it sounds so good. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. My second one, self-titled, having Mark Tremonti come and do a solo on a song. I'm like, I got the guy from Creed on my record. Like that was pretty huge. I don't know, there's so many.
What year were you in All That Remains?
I started tour managing in 2014, and then I think it was by the end of the year, maybe 2015 is when I joined. And then
Okay.
and that was until 2021.
And what about DevilDriver?
2012.
Okay, you were out. We had Austin. He was the drummer for DevilDriver.
Yeah, Austin.
Some years ago. I've known Austin since early Showcase Theater days. Our bands, Believe This Guy in Mantis, and then we toured with Dope in 6. Austin's just been a homie.
R.I.P. Showcase Theater.
Man, that's about 20 minutes.
So many good shows there.
I'm 20 minutes. My wife and I had date nights about a month. Well, we have date nights almost bi-weekly, but it was about a month ago. We went and ate at this new place, and it was called Circle City Tavern. And I looked at the directions. I'm like, I think this is by Showcase. And we pull in the parking lot. It's next door to Showcase. And it was the first time, even though I've been in Corona for 6 years, I grew up in Riverside. I've driven by Showcase many times, and we didn't know what the hell. The city keeps changing what it's going to do with the building. But dude, I looked in the window, and it's the Showcase. And I mean, I grew up there from 95 to we were the last.
Did
metal
you see
band.
AFI there?
I did see AFI, but what's funny is I didn't know AFI. I went to they weren't even headlining. I want to say it was like Straight Face. It was one Victory band. It was either like Straight Faced or one of those hardcore bands from that era. And years later, I'm like, oh my God, dude, I saw AFI. I didn't get an AFI until maybe like later 90s, early 2000s, which is crazy. But this show was like in 97, so I didn't really know much about them. But fuck, dude, I used to go. I saw the Victory nights where it was Earth Crisis, Integrity, Hatebreed was, the second band up, and like Bloodlet opened. The nights that like, dude, I remember the first hardcore show I went to was in 96, and it was a Victory Records night, and Strife was headlining. And I just see the pit open up. I was a big punk rocker. I listened to only punk rock, dude. And one of my boys like, you got to come listen to this hardcore band. I'm like, all right, fuck. I see the guys in the backpack, and they got the fucking jeans and the hoodies. And I walk in right before Strife, and it's fucking sold out. It's at Showcase. And all of a sudden, they open up with One Truth was the opening song. And that long intro. And all of a sudden, the place just erupted. Rick Rodney's lost in the fucking crowd because people are jumping from everywhere. And I'm like, what the fuck is this? And after that, I'm like, I'm going to be a hardcore singer. Like, that's it. Yeah. I was a bass player in all the punk bands. But as soon as I saw Rick Rodney, I'm like, I need to fucking scream. Like, I need to be that guy. And Strife was pivotal. Strife was probably one of my biggest inspirations growing up in the music scene.
So many good riffs.
Great riffs, dude. And I can't believe they're still jamming. I have not seen them in probably 10 years, or right up until I think they stopped. But I got to go see them, dude. Rick was a huge frontman. He was up there with like the Ian MacKays and the Henry Rollins, dude. When you watch that dude perform,
yeah, great stuff.
That's awesome. Mike, did you have something for him?
Oh my God, yeah, so many things. So you had said two things that I kind of connected in my head in the beginning when you said you were kind of raised in, I believe you said like a blue collar family, and then when you first called your mom on the Family Values tour, knowing that there's a little bit of pushback, like there's no money in music. Your parents always want to play it safe. Did you have a family that said, follow your passion as a passion, but not a career? And they were kind of like trying to coax you in more of a conservative direction, or were they still super supportive of you just following your dreams?
They were so supportive, both of them. I mean, obviously there's reservations there and there, but they got me my first 2 instruments, got me paid for my lessons when I was in 5th grade. And I started because they saw me they just knew that I was always, I was so fortunate to grow up in a house full of music. My parents were concert goers. Like they saw that famous show that the Who played. I stepped on you to see the Who. They like my dad's seen Led Zeppelin a bunch, and like so when I grew up, I had music from always playing in the house. My dad was into like Led Zeppelin, disco, R&B and blues, loved James Brown. So I got that kind of stuff from him. My mom was into like Patsy Cline and Madonna and more like Michael Bolton and like, which the best, more pop stuff. And then my 10-year-old my brother's 10 years older than me. He's the one that got me into Rob Zombie and Ozzy and Tool and all the more edgier things. And so I was just in love with it. Talk about full circle moments and my mom. Um, she flew me out because she loves Pearl Jam. So she flew me out with her to go see Pearl Jam on the Vitalogy tour in 1995 with Bad Religion opening. So sick. And at Red Rock. So like it just like blew me away. And then I ended up coming back. I was with Whitechapel on Mayhem, and I got to tour manage a show there. And the same thing, I call another caller up because they have all the plaques in the hallway of all like the shows and stuff, and it had our show in there. And then I ended up getting to go play it opening for Jelly Roll a couple of years ago. So I got to actually play Red Rocks and sign my
Hell
name
yeah.
on there's a wall in there with like Tom Petty and shit. And so another like really cool full circle moment in life.
Yeah.
But they were so supportive, I think because they loved music and they knew how passionate I was about it, and never complained about me having my friends over for band practice in the
Yeah.
basement, making all the noise until whatever time. And no, so I was just I got real super, super fortunate, no pushback.
My folks still tell that story because I mean I grew up in an extremely conservative family, government, military, and my dad was an artist. He was an illustrator for local authors. And he was like, this is an amazing outlet. It's an amazing hobby to have because it helps you escape the rat race, but never subscribe to just doing that because it'll make you lazy. And obviously I said, fuck that. Like I'm going to do the alternative of what it is they had recommended so strongly. But I think the cool part was because my parents were also extremely supportive. They got me into piano at 7, trumpet, violin, percussion, into actually having a
Nice.
drum set. And they knew that I don't want to say they were at fault, but they were still extremely supportive, but very weary because of the generation they had grew up in, but they were very musically oriented. I didn't know music existed off of Casey Kasem until I was in my mid-teens. It was Motown and R&B for me. My first 3 concerts were Boyz II Men. I was a soulful guy.
Sick.
But and the reason I ask that is because I think that echo chamber or that ecosystem that we grow up in really does stem, whether that's the rebellious approach to why we do what we do, or knowing that we were almost molded to this. And one thing I like to hear from creatives is having that passion and that connection and the gratitude for the way that we were raised, good or bad, because it got us to this place. And I don't think enough people like give that grace and that gratitude to our families or our environments or our circumstances. So to hear somebody say it with such a smile on their face is such an infectious, like amazing thing, because you also hear the doom and the gloom, the I'm self-made thing. And it's like, but there's so many things to be grateful for from where we came from that got us to this place, pass or fail, So one, I wanted to say it's amazing to hear you say, because I love to hear musicians or artists have passion and appreciation for where they were, what they had been through to be able to love the life they have. But how did all that work with you going? You said you had gone to art college. I mean, were you just a creative in all aspects? Everything you touched came with that OCD, ADHD imagination that was just running wild? Or did you eventually stay honed in and you were very dialed in each thing when it was its turn?
Well, I think it was all simultaneous until, music and art and cooking are like my 3 passions in life. I would say if I had to like nutshell it, I've done a lot of things I've been excited about. I mean, fitness is in there too. And at one point I was going to be a pro skateboarder. Nope. I thought I was going to be, but yeah, like I had been drawing and doing artistic stuff since I was a kid. And then I was in advanced placement all through high school and I was taking lessons. And then, during high school, you kind of, you kind of decide like, well, what direction am I going to go? You know, like where can I actually make a career for myself? And it's tough to think about that when you're 17 years old. And so, in my first art college was a learning lesson. It was more of a liberal art school, and it's the Art Academy of Cincinnati, which is super prestigious, but they didn't teach me anything. So I got
Yeah.
very easily distracted, and I just got over it. It was all like this open to interpretation stuff, and there was no like they didn't harness on fundamentals. And then I quit that to go on tour, and then the second school, I went back to another college, and it was led by an illustrator. And I learned more from him in 6 months than I did all through high school, because he harnessed on repetition and fundamentals, like shadow, like principles. He's like, so I was going to go into package design, like advertising,
Yeah.
because that's one of the tried and true. You can take the skill set and actually have a career, and not be like, oh, I'm a painter, you know, like that's a tough way to make a living. I mean, unless you're insanely good. But I, I just always did music, and like I said, that was always until I can make it, until I can do it, just trial and error, trial and error. And it's the thing about being in a band, and this as well. And I know this too, as far as I mean, you're a tattoo artist, and obviously being in a shop or other places, the personality management is probably the hardest part. And especially
Yeah.
being in a band, you're married to those 3, 4 other people. You got to live together, work together, learn how to communicate. You got to have those tools to communicate and not harbor resentment. Like, why does this motherfucker every day I come in the bus, and then his dirty show socks are right hanging on his thing in front of my bunk? You need to have corrective conversations so that you can exist together. And as time goes on, we see it a million times. People, you lose your gig, or you like, I can't take it, I'm out, peace, or whatever
Yeah.
the case that things are. I think the personality management and knowing how to like constructively navigate those waters is just as important as having talent or motivation.
I think the parallels between music and art. I rarely subscribe to the badge of tattoo artist, because I just prefer to be a creative, which is kind of where the question came from, is with everything you touch coming from a sense of passion, purpose, or creativity, because that really creates like the personal brand. It's part of your personality, not your persona. And
Mhm.
Jake and I have built a community in that same vein, because we run into the same issues. Tattoo artists are always surrounded by a lot of negativity, or a lot of like problematic opinion projection, which I know occurs a lot in the music industry. You know that I'm going to be counterculture, so I'm just kind of angry about stuff. And that creates such a negative approach to what forward progression can look like. And I really valued the question that Jake had about your interest in potentially becoming more of a mentor or a guide in that, because I think that is the point in bringing people together, is to be able to allow people to see that there's more positivity and there's more productivity that can be created through the organization and through the clarity of your mind than what we're used to in our natural states or in our current environments. So it's really cool to listen to the two of you have that conversation, because you had been through so many different chapters, so many different seasons, and you're both very successful in your own rights and what it is you do, having come from musical backgrounds, which I find extremely similar to artists. No different than you. I was 17 touring with bands like Against Me, Smoker Fire, the Necromantics, and Flatfoot 56. And then I went to the Illinois Art Institute, where they handed me a keyboard and wanted me to color sheet in for Pixar for the rest of my life. You know what I mean? And it was like, I could not subscribe to it. And so from that point, I kind of went off the deep end, where I kept playing music, and I really got into just like the tattoo music culture. And that's how I walked into tattooing, and I chose that path. But I realized that me back then, I was driven by the anger. I was driven by the negativity. I was driven by not wanting to subscribe to what was the safe bet. So I always put myself in worse situations to fight my way out of it. And I think that is one thing that musicians and entrepreneurs like Jake, musicians and entrepreneurs like yourself, really do tend to shine the brightest, is when we are, like you said, the peaks and valleys. When we're in the valley, we tend to shine the brightest, because we know how to work back up to the peak, because we do it so much through all of the ebbs and flows. And to be able to sit in rooms with individuals who have those stories to tell, who have those experiences already learned, would be such an impactful thing for up and coming musicians or even musicians who feel like they've fallen off and just got stuck in that valley for such a long time. They lost that gleam to what made them love the stress and the struggle so much.
Well, I'm sure you're like me, especially when it comes to like the ADHD aspect of things. I work best when I'm under pressure.
Yeah.
When I have fire behind me, it's like it's go time. I need a critical it turns my critical thinking on, which like in turn like create the best stuff. And if there's I don't know, too much time or like yeah, I I agree with you. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Sorry, there wasn't a question there. I got into my feels and my passion about it because I do appreciate being able to just be a fly on the wall to hear, 2 gentlemen like yourself, like, really rip on this stuff, and I think that's really what impacts not just the musicians, but the creatives, because at the end of the day, we're all creatives in a way, and we all go through this mental fog and fatigue and even, like just attaching all of these anchors. So to be able to hear you guys just like talk about the glory days and just like light up talking about it, it almost creates a beacon for artists who are afraid to face those storms. You know what I mean? That lighthouse approach of everybody's looking for the tugboat to come and save them and pull them safely to shore or where they want to go. What they really need is a lighthouse, like gentlemen like you have been through it, who can still have a shit ton of life in them no matter how much older you get. It's almost like that light shines a shit ton brighter just because you know what you've been through and you know nothing ahead of you is going to be harder. It's just going to be different.
Well, there's no direct path. There's no school for this,
Yeah.
right? There's no I think you can be mentored and you can take in input and other people's experiences and what they've done. I mean, and that's where like a really good manager can come in and
Hmm.
be like, well, I've done this. I know how to navigate these waters, but there's no real playbook, you know?
Yeah.
But we've both seen people like I've been on tour with bands who have had all this money behind them and sound great, look great, but they just end up falling flat on their face. And it doesn't necessarily mean just because you have a big bank behind you that you're going to be successful. You can buy all the radio play you want or wherever it goes, but doesn't mean that people are going to just like latch onto it and you have a career the rest of your life, you know?
Oh, absolutely.
I think it's really cool, man, because to see you with a smile on your face all some years later, now at that 30-year mark or wherever you are, I think a lot of people like myself, if I had the mentality, well, first of all, if I didn't party so much, but if I had that mentality of pursuing band management or tour management, which I was going to do, but when I exited, it was more of like, I need to get my health priorities straight. So I ended up going to culinary school first, which led me into nutrition, which led me into fitness. I took a kind of different approach, but I'm trying to get this question out as good as I can. I think if people had that opportunity or that mindset of being that not just a hired gun, but getting behind the tour management, getting behind how everything works, becoming that kid again. It seems like after you did all this touring, you kind of became that kid again. I want to learn how to do this, and I want to do this, and I want to fuck around with this, and I want to play with these things, and I want to know this. If I think if more people kind of had that, their music careers would probably last a little bit longer. I don't know. Would you agree to that?
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, in retrospect, I mean, there's a million different things that woulda, shoulda, coulda. I
Yes.
could have done over that time or like sunk my teeth into a little bit more like um maybe like because we're at the end of the day we're all betting on ourselves, right? And especially with this, we're like we're like I'm going to make this happen one way or the other and like and figure it out. But it's easy to be like, well, I'm doing something. So once again, that like level of content comes in. I got a gig and I'm on tour. And that takes up so much bandwidth, I think, in general, that sometimes you're like, man, I should start this company or I have this idea. And right now, like while I'm in the hot seat, that I could maybe monetize but everybody's different. Some people start a merch line or they do something like that and it ends up becoming successful so that you can't have a little maybe other avenues. They say like the most successful people always have different streams. It's never just like, oh, I do this one thing a lot, most cases. So yeah, I think in retrospect, could have, I think, applied that passion into other things simultaneously, but here then now.
Yeah.
All this will be my last question, and Mikey can have one, but what is the one thing? I mean, you've done a fuck ton. You've done a lot of really cool things in your career. What is one thing that you, I don't want to say wish you were able to do, but like, what is that one aha moment that Aaron would want to accomplish? Like, if you got that shot, what would be like, that's what I want, either playing bass with a specific band or doing this one big tour? What is your aha moment that maybe you haven't reached yet?
And I don't know. I think that like at the end of the day, if I hung up this call right now and I don't know, like Rise Against or something was just like, hey, like, would you be interested? Like I think obviously getting that those that great gig that you know, something cool and that can take you to the next level or like at least has longevity. Sure, it's always possible and just keep working at it. I don't know. That's a
I guess
tough one. I mean,
I have a two-part question from that then. Is a full-time position in, let's say, a Rise Against or a Deftones or a Metallica, would that be the ultimate exit plan? Or do you like kind of just being able to have the freedom to not pick and choose, but be in a position where you can kind of fucking pick and choose where you want to go now?
I think it is great to be in different camps and get new experiences because you never know who you're going to meet, who's going to be a pleasure to work with or play with or be creative with. But at the end of the day, yeah, I mean, there's nothing better, at least for me, than you know, like for instance, when all that remains, like part of that. And like we were a creative powerhouse and like my first record, Madness, was amazing. We got to go to out work with Howard Benson, who was like one of my dream producers, who did like Seos and My Chemical Romance and all these bands. And so getting out there to go and like there's nothing better for me at least than I love being in the studio with people and watching because I truly believe that music and energy is an exchange. Like when you're on stage, whether it's small or big, there's still a give and take, like we're all feeling something at that moment. And that's such an escape. And whether it's negative or positive, and as I'm a very empathic person. So if a room is weird or something doesn't sit right, I feel it. But when you're up there and you're like, and the vibe is good, there's no high like it. There's no roller coaster or no drug or whatever. Like there is nothing better than being so lost in that moment. And I have Tourette's as well. And the two times when like it's impossible for it to act, I won't say impossible, but it doesn't, but is when I'm working out and when I'm on stage. Like it just completely goes away because I'm so like saturated with beautiful positive energy and I'm doing that thing. And so when you're being in the studio, taking an idea and watching it, just those notes or that little melody or that thing come to life, and now you created something tangible that like you and everybody else can feel, and now you just like brought energy into a room, and I think that is just such a crazy concept that you put enough vibrations together that you can feel something. But yeah, I'd say having something true and big and full time and like working towards this and even being involved in like the business side and now on the music side, getting the best of both worlds, the two things that I do love. I think that's definitely that's my happy place when I get to do both.
Fucking nailed that question.
Yeah. It almost answers.
I'm done, Mike.
No, so that almost answers mine, but this almost comes from gathered knowledge from just working with creatives for so long. So many people get that when they finally hit that point to where they're on stage, they're at the place, they've created their passion into a full-time career they get to do. What defines Aaron when he's not on stage, when he's not working out? Like, who's the man behind everything that everyone probably knows you from, just from the access they do commonly get to you? Because a lot of artists, the reason they fail is because they're at their best when they're performing, but they don't know who they are when they're off stage or when they're not able to tattoo or able to create. So how do you like truly full circle all of that and just always stay in that flow state? What are the things? What's the mindset? Anything?
That's a very deep, challenging question. It's like the Zoolander moment. Who am I? Um, uh, but it is true though. Like what is it that brings you? But I know that like I am part of an amazing family. I don't know. It's like I don't know. It's like those little passions that I have like make me feel whole. Like whether I'm playing or even just cooking. Cooking is also my passion. Fitness, but I don't know. It's it's a challenging one to like really put into.
Would it be safe to say that you just have to make sure that whatever it is you do, find the passion in it? Don't make everything busy work until you get back on stage, but make everything feel as passionate as the next opportunity you get to do.
I would certainly say that no matter what it is, like at the end of the day, like all the things that I am fortunate to get to do, I do because I'm passionate. I've been asked to play for people, asked to tour manage people, asked to do X and Y. And there's been times where I'm like, that doesn't serve me. Or I just truly I don't want to walk into a situation where I know that I'm not going to be happy, regardless of the money or whatever the case is. Because once again, I used to always say life is too short not to be happy all the time. Right. And why be in a relationship with, and that goes to partners, and that goes to uh, people that you work with. They're all relationships, and they all have to be nurtured, and they have to be healthy. And boundary setting and knowing through our previous experiences, knowing, now we are on our radar, like what red flags we go. Been there, done that. I've tasted that food, and I don't like it.
Yeah.
And it's being aware so that you don't end up like being taken advantage of or doing something that is unhealthy to you.
Yeah.
And I think it is important just to be passionate. No matter if you do dishes, be passionate about it. Do a good job. More anything. I actually love doing dishes because it's therapeutic. I have a dishwasher and I never fucking use it. I would rather do it by hand. Be like micro
See,
win. That felt good.
I'm a trained chef, and it's the worst thing for me to have to do that, especially when you go from a commercial kitchen and the
Yeah.
amount of dishes that come through that place. Like, we're so spoiled. You just use one saute pan once, fucking throw it. Somebody grabs it and puts it in the dishwasher. So I just had like 50 saute stage, saute pans going. I hate the dishes. Thank God my wife does them, but I do the
I
cooking.
just
So
I just I love the process of stuff. And so
Yeah.
the prep, but I've worked in kitchens too, it's a little different than when you're at home or cooking for friends or
sure,
family.
for sure.
I will agree to that for sure. Like just like get it done, get it done. It just keep showing up. But I like the prep and the execution, the finale, which is eating, and then like the cleanup part. Now everything's spotless. Like I don't know.
I see
I
that.
love
I
it.
see that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
My
like
It's like because I think the fact that you're completing a task, and especially as someone that's ADHD, we know how
Yeah.
many things we don't complete and be like, fuck, I only did that thing halfway through.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
I
that's
like
what it's in our power and our control to, finalize.
Well, and I
for
think
sure.
that's where the ADHD does become a superpower, is when you have the ability to follow through and to almost best the beast that it can be, where you just become a 75 percenter in all things. And that creates a lot of discouragement. When you've
Mhm.
mastered the art of that, fuck, I can't believe I'm going to say it, when you learn how to force your focus, then all of a sudden it does become a genuine, like a genuine superpower where you can maximize your output and your optimization of all things and still see it through to a point where you, as the internal psychopath, give it a passing grade, like you actually nailed it, and you do that with everything. It's so fucking rewarding. But one thing you said that
Mhm.
I'm going to remember until the day I die is life is too short to not like always be happy or something along that vein. Because even though I know it, I feel it, I look at situations like I am just genuinely displeased with all of this right now. But I never tell myself, well, life's far too short. I talk about time. I have an hourglass that I stare at every day on my desk, remembering the value of each grain of sand. But never once has it crossed my mind to think life's too short to not just find the enjoyment or the happiness in all things, or eradicate the shit that does not bring me the opportunity of that.
It's a fact, you know, and too many people, even going back to the whole like Midwest mentality, if that's well, that's correlation to it of,
That's right.
you know, like I gotta get this job or else I'm going to be looked at as a failure, and I have to just be stable, and I'm going to do this thing that I probably don't really like or doesn't bring me any satisfaction, and then but I'm fine, or like I don't know, and people stay in relationships with people that they're not happy with, but they're too afraid of either like hurting somebody or it's scarier. The unknown is scarier than the comfort. And even if
Yeah.
that comfort is toxic or unhealthy, you know, and I'll speak generally on this. You look at abusive situations, whether they're male or female or psychological or emotional or physical, people stay in them because they don't want it's the unknown is scarier than like, well, even though this is painful, it's familiar. And there's some sort of, you know, unhealthy comfort in that. And easier said than done sometimes, but it's true, you know, like if you're living in stress and anxiety or like you don't like what you're doing, you know, like everyone for the most part has the ability to fix their circumstance or to, you know, but like I said, easier said than done, but in theory, it's true.
I can relate to that. Like I will probably never leave Iowa simply because I love it. It's where I want to raise my family. It's the most down to earth traditional place in the world, you know. It's very peaceful. I can travel the country, but I can always come back to home base. However, a lot of what you said really does relate to those old traditional values where it doesn't matter how you feel, you still have to be the X, Y, and Z. You still have to provide to protect, and you're going to take beatings. And that doesn't mean you're going to enjoy it. It just means it's your role and your responsibility. To a degree, that is a superpower of mine. But in the same note, it also does put me in the position of the discomfort of changing the thing that I had already been beaten the shit out of about sometimes overweighs the importance of changing it immediately so I can find a path that will provide me with notably more happiness or joy.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. Hell yeah. Well, Aaron, dude, I appreciate your time, man. I don't want to keep you too long. Where can people find you? If someone wants to reach out from some of these fucking nuggets you dropped on them, where's the best place to find them or find you?
Instagram is usually my like primary social media. It's Bubble is Forever, like Batman, but Bubble.
Yep.
And
I didn't
so,
know that.
yeah, that's my pretty much the only I can only handle so much social media, and so I have like my one avenue, and that's it.
Yeah. Well, man, this was a great connection. Thank you, Matt Vincent, for making this happen. But dude, let's run this back. I would like to talk to the Aaron in 6 months from now and see what you got going on because fuck, you've had some fascinating shit, bro.
Appreciate that so much. This was amazing. You guys are incredible, great energy, awesome people. So very thankful and grateful that we got to connect today and talk about some cool stuff.
Yeah. Appreciate you, man.